Welcome to My Business Matters, the Michigan Chamber podcast.
Hello, I'm Jim Holcomb, President and CEO of the Michigan Chamber and today's podcast host. Today, we're going to be taking a closer look at one of the largest infrastructure projects in the country right now, and it's happening right here in Michigan. It's the new Gordie Howe Bridge. It's the international crossing taking place right at our Ontario-Michigan border. A big welcome to Heather Grondin today. She's the Chief Relations Officer for the Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority, and that's the entity overseeing the construction and operation of this critical new crossing. Heather, welcome.
Hi, thank you very much, Jim.
Well, it is exciting. We've been working on this bridge project for several years now, and it's just fun to watch it. And you can drive by, you can see the pictures, and I know we just, I believe, had a connection of maybe the decking, but I think it's maybe helpful for our audience to start at the beginning. Just how long has this process been going, and where do you think we are right now?
Yeah, so, it surprises people when I tell them this, but, the initial planning of this project goes back to 2000. So we're 24 years in on the planning of this bridge, planning and delivery of this bridge. And, you asked, where are we? We're so close. We're working toward opening the bridge at the end of 2025. So just, a little less than a year and a half away from opening. So when you look back at, those early days and how much work and effort has gone in, we are so close to being at that point where all of those years of effort have paid off, and we'll be able to cut that ribbon.
Yeah, it's so exciting. You get close and you just want it faster than it can get here sometime. But I actually wasn't aware that it had been so many years in the planning. And I know there's the Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority is playing a real crucial role. And can you give a little explanation of what that is and how it came about?
Yeah, for sure. So my organization, Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority, or WDBA, is a Canadian Crown corporation, and I don't really think there's an equivalent to that on the U.S. side. So, we function very much like a private sector organization. We have a board of directors that oversees us and oversees our operations, but ultimately we report to the Canadian government, and we're funded by the Canadian government, and are required to follow Canadian federal legislation. So we're a bit of a mix of a private sector organization that has a very specific mandate with public sector transparency and financial requirements, fiduciary requirements. We were created in 2012 as a result of a crossing agreement that was signed between Canada and Michigan that laid out how the Gordie Howe International Bridge was going to be delivered. And then our staffing and operations began, actually we're just about to hit our 10th anniversary of staffing and operations of Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority. And our sole mandate, the only thing that we do, is the Gordie Howe International Bridge. So overseeing the delivery, which is through a public-private partnership, and then we'll continue to oversee the operations after we open.
Now, I know the public-private partnership was a big selling point here in Michigan, and you're talking about transparency. It really seems, especially on such a large infrastructure project, something that builds a lot of confidence in the general public and voters that things are being done the right way, but it also showing the cooperation between government and private sector to do some of these bigger projects.
Exactly. So public-private partnerships have been used for quite some time in Canada and, all over the world. And it was identified early on, I would say around 2008, that the best way to deliver this project was through a public-private partnership. We did a very extensive procurement process that started in 2015 and then finalized in 2018 to identify our private sector partner, who is Bridging North America. And that organization brings together companies who have experience in international bridge building, and that's what you want. You want people who are experienced, who know how to work with subcontractors, who know how to work with the unions, and know how to build a bridge.
Yeah, we don't want to do this on the cheap. You aren't looking for the lowest bid here. You want people with experience. You want somebody to build a quality. How long is the bridge estimated to last when you do something to this? What would be a lifespan for a bridge that's being constructed like Gordie Howe?
Yeah, so what was really important to us when we were starting to draft the technical requirements for this bridge was to ensure that long-term durability. And you do that by ensuring that you're requiring the types of materials that will allow for that durability and construction techniques. So this bridge is being built for a 125-year lifespan.
Oh, that's tremendous.
Yeah.
Now, our listeners, they always like kind of, quick facts and figures. What would you, when we're talking about the Gordie Howe Bridge, if we're talking about numbers, what do you think are some of the most noteworthy facts about this project?
Yeah, well, I think first and foremost, when we talk about the Ontario-Michigan connection, we have to look at the volume of trade that goes through Windsor and Detroit. As a whole, between Canada and the U.S., $1.3 trillion in trade moves. And right here at Windsor-Detroit, 30% of that is being moved.
Oh, wow.
So if you take that whole huge amount, think about all of that that's traveling right through Windsor-Detroit. And that's why it's so critical that we have infrastructure capacity that can accommodate the movement of trade. That's just common sense for the economic development and growth of Windsor-Detroit, of Michigan, Ontario, of U.S. and Canada. But more than that, we have tons of stats and facts. We've had over 13 million hours of work go into the project to date. We've had over 12,000 people who have been trained to work on the project on either the Canadian and U.S. side, who have been working since we started construction in October of 2018. 42% of all of the people that we've hired have been local, meaning either from Detroit or the Windsor area, and that's a number that we're so proud of. And then, stats about the bridge itself. Our towers, 722 feet. The work on the towers finished in summer or around fall of 2023. So just to give people some context, that rivals the height of the center tower at the GM Renaissance Center. Our main deck is 0.5 miles, or I'm on the Canadian side, so I'll say just over 800 meters. And our stay cables, which we just finished installing all of our stay cables, 216 stay cables installed. And I've been told if you line those from end to end, it will be about the distance from the Windsor-Detroit area to Alaska.
Oh, wow. That is amazing.
I know.
I love the stat about the 42% local talent, because when you're doing something with a project like this, and there's a lot of taxpayer dollars, it's great to keep it local. It's great to employ the people. And also, the people you're training, they're going to have a usable skill when this project ends. Hopefully they can continue in this line of work, or they're marketable to keep building other projects that we need, both in Ontario and in Michigan.
Exactly.
Now, in things that are moving back and forth, it's not just, I know a lot happens with the auto sector and there's food and agriculture, but it's a lot of people too. And do we know anything about traffic patterns or how this is going to work when when it finally opens up? Yeah,
so, there's a huge component of commuter traffic that moves across the border, more so from the Windsor side into Detroit than Detroit into Windsor. I believe there's an estimate of about 6,000 people, commuters, move every day across the bridge to go to work and then go back home. So that is in addition to the 7,000 trucks per day that move between and across the Windsor-Detroit corridor. Where are people coming from? Where are they going? When it comes to passenger traffic, that for the most part is local, really from the Windsor and surrounding area, Detroit and surrounding area. And then on top of that is tourists. And then when it comes to our commercial vehicles, really the corridor that we're going to be seeing trucks moving from stretches really from Montreal all the way down to Mexico, right? The Laredo, Texas, and the Mexico area.
Yeah, and I know with so much commerce flowing back and forth, it really is an economic engine. I've talked to my colleagues in Canada, whether the Canadian Chamber, the Ontario Chamber, we're talking about the regionalism. It really is a magnet when we're in a global economy of having an entire region where we can move not only people, but products, goods, services back and forth much more freely and efficiently to make the businesses economically competitive. And again, hopefully grow the population and everyone will benefit.
Exactly. I really like your use of the phrase global economy, because that really is like the economies of Canada, the U.S., and Michigan are so integrated, and we really do need to look at ourselves as an integrated global economy. And, when we look at our supply chains and how dependent we are on one another and how dependent the movement of goods is on robust and healthy infrastructure, it really does speak to the need of us thinking that way and then investing in infrastructure that way.
Yeah, it is about logistics. I think, unfortunately, if we just think back to the COVID pandemic and what happened with supply chains and anything we can do in the future to make sure, hopefully we'll never see another pandemic, but just day in, day out, business operations, we need to be able to move people and product efficiently, cost effectively, and freely to make sure we can get the job done.
Exactly.
Can you give any explanation? How does it work? I mean, on a project like this, we're spanning boundaries, the interplay between the various governmental entities and how that comes together and can work efficiently. How does that all get coordinated?
Yeah. So, one thing I do want to note, and as I said earlier, this project's been, over 2 decades in the making. And throughout that time, there have been different parties in power. So whether it's been conservatives or liberals on the Canadian side, or Republicans or Democrats on the U.S. side, what has been consistent has been support to seeing this project move forward, and that's been very beneficial to us. But yes, we have to comply with legislation and requirements at the Canadian federal level, the U.S. federal level, Ontario provincial, Michigan state, City of Windsor, City of Detroit. So there are lots of requirements that we need to ensure that we're always meeting. And the way that we do that is through clear communication and really good partnerships. We've been working with the cities all of this time, throughout construction, throughout the definition of our requirements for the project. And that holds same with state and the federal levels, just keeping those partnerships alive, keeping those lines of communication alive, and ensuring that there's very clear understanding of what we need to do to continue to meet all of our legislative requirements.
Now, you used the word earlier, transparency, and I think that's so important when you're spending taxpayer dollars and you have all the different governmental entities, and you would hope that it's just people of goodwill. You can have a disagreement, but it shouldn't be partisan. It shouldn't be political party trying to take a stand for a political. It should be what can happen best for all the citizens on both sides of the border to make sure this project goes forward.
Exactly. And I do think there's always been an understanding of the benefit that having this new bridge or this new really border crossing facility, which does include our 2 ports of entry, the connection into Interstate 75 and a connection into Highway 401 in Ontario, really the importance of moving this forward, overcoming challenges, overcoming hurdles and disagreements to hit that end goal of opening the bridge. And that dedication and commitment to move forward and keep that end goal in mind of opening the bridge has really been the driving force to get us to where we're at.
Yeah, no matter how much good planning goes in, and you have a lot of smart people, from engineers to civil engineers to PR to everything that goes into a project like this to make sure it's done right, you're going to have, I can't even imagine how many hundreds of challenges each day of something that just doesn't work exactly correctly, maybe a part or maybe a design element or whatever it is. There's always a problem to solve.
There's always a problem to solve. I mean, you said the word earlier, pandemic. Certainly from our planning perspective, when we were thinking about our construction process and our schedule and how long things were going to take, we didn't really factor a pandemic into it. But through collaboration and, again, that dedication, being creative, we were able to push forward with very minimal impact overall.
And something like this, what's been the most surprising or some of the bigger challenges that you've seen come about? Because it is exciting when people solve a problem, but things that came up that maybe you just don't anticipate.
Yeah, definitely the pandemic was one of those. And, I do want to just take a minute to speak to that. And, really give a lot of credit to our construction team who are on the site. We never stopped constructing. Work didn't stop a single day during the pandemic. But through creatively reconfiguring our construction schedule, through focusing in on work where people could maintain that safe distance away from each other, but still continue to make progress, realigning the type of work that was being done and on what side and how, they were able to keep work going, which was amazing. And then, in terms of other surprises or things, sometimes it has just been a bit of a change in the approach to how we're constructing. At one point in the approach to building the bridge, there was some consideration given to, inserting pieces or having pieces rise from the water. But then that was going to impact navigation along the Detroit River. So instead we did our unbalanced cantilever approach, which people have been watching being constructed over the last year and a bit. So sometimes it's just been, initial conceptions of how we were going to do things. And then once on site and, boots on the ground, different approaches seem to be better to help achieve what we wanted to achieve.
Yeah, I don't think we can lose sight, as we said, the number 12,000 people working on a project like this. Just the amazing talent of the men and women who are constructing this from design to implementation to all the tradespeople, really making sure that we have, a quality piece of infrastructure, as you said, hopefully will last us well over 100 years.
Yes, exactly. And what's also been a top priority has been safety. There's a very rigorous safety regime on the project. We've received this award called the John Beck Award, which recognizes safety 3 years in a row on this project. We're the first project that has ever received that award 3 years in a row. So that's been really important to the project team, that we're continuing to make progress, but we're still maintaining at all times a good safety record and that people are able to go home at the end of the night.
I think I'm correct. And recently, didn't the deck get connected from the two sides, that we kind of put that together? That had to be a pretty triumphant experience for everyone to see that happen.
Yes. So we just reached the milestone in June of the deck connection finally happening. So we've been working on the deck over the river since December of 2022. So the pieces have been moved in section by section from both sides since then. And I can't tell you how many times I'd been asked, are those two sides actually going to align? And the answer was always yes, and they did in fact align. So just hitting that point of being able to hit that 0.5 miles or 853 meters over the water was significant, and we've had the opportunity to celebrate that with ironworkers who did a very special ceremony with a tree, which recognizes, a safe work environment. The laborers were able to do a celebration, and the operating engineers also did a celebration, just as an opportunity to recognize their efforts, as you had noted earlier, and really celebrate that deck. Now, I do want to remind people, though, that does not mean the bridge is done. That just means the structure is connected. Please don't show up ready to cross the bridge. We still have about another year of work on top of that. So doing things like the electrical system, the water management system, paving, installing lights, installing signage. So still more work to do, but having that structure in place has been a real celebration for us. Yeah,
definitely exciting. If people want to follow the kind of the status of the bridge, are there certain milestones they should look for? Where's the best place for them to get information on how the bridge is progressing?
Yeah, so our website, Gordie Howe International Bridge.com, has a wealth of information, and we also link to all of our social media channels, so Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, X, LinkedIn. We post updates on our social media channels every week. We do photo galleries, drone videos, interviews with people who work on the sites. So really that's a great way of staying up to date. People can also sign up for our e-newsletter via our website. I promise we don't email that often, but people can sign up there. And those are great ways to stay up to date. I'd also note on the Canadian side, we installed an observation platform at a local park called Malden Park. And then on the U.S. side, from the park at River Rouge or from Fort Wayne, you can see a great view of the bridge.
Oh, great. Heather, thank you so much for joining us today. I can't tell you how exciting it is to think about the project, but to actually get a little look and a little listen behind the curtain of how this came together and how it's all being moving forward. So thank you so much. Thank you for your work on the project, but thank you for enlightening our listeners today.
Thank you so much. Anytime.
Thank you. And with that, we are out of time. Please tune in to our next episode. Subscribe and like to our podcast for easy notifications. Until then, follow the progress of the Gordie Howe Bridge.